Hello and welcome to Chapter 3 and 4 of Anthem. We're hopefully going to get caught up after some of these snow days that we had. So students will read and answer questions using the information from the text, as always. And you're going to watch a video on how electricity is conducted in a very simple, basic way. And you're going to apply that situation or that information to situations in the novel in which equality is able to create electricity in a very similar way using very simple, basic, everyday objects and supplies.
Hello and welcome to SciShow Experiments. Today, we're discussing what may be the most cliche and well-known science experiment of all time, though it is also one of the most misunderstood science experiments of all time. The important thing to note here, the electricity is not in the lemon. First, let's do this thing. Now roll the lemon around a bit to break up all the little juice packets inside to get it nice and juicy. Stick a nail on one side. It has to be a galvanized nail, meaning it's coated in zinc. And on the other side, stick something copper. I'm using copper wire. You will probably be unsurprised to discover that when I connect this voltmeter to the copper and the zinc, it will show some electric current. But if I ask you why there are electrons flowing from one metal to the other, there's a fairly good chance that you would either be stumped or you would be wrong. So let's fix that. Electrochemical cells, also called batteries, require three things: 2 electrodes and 1 electrolyte. One of the electrodes has to have a stronger desire for electrons than the other. In chemistry, we say that it has a higher electronegativity. One electrode, the one that wants the electrons more, is called the cathode, and the one that gives up electrons is called the anode. In our lemon battery, here we have copper in the wire and zinc from this galvanized nail. Copper likes having electrons more than zinc, so it's more electronegative and thus our cathode. But if that's the case, then why can't we just hook the copper to the zinc and watch the electrons zoom across? And what's the point of the lemon? I bought a lemon and I want to use it. So electrons aren't just going to abandon their nice stable home and make the metal all positively charged on one side and negative on the other. There are a ton of forces that prevent that from happening. Since zinc is losing all those electrons, it's going to have to lose protons too, and that's where the third component comes in, the electrolyte. The wire that connects the copper to the zinc allows electrons to flow freely, but protons are huge compared to electrons, and they can't move through wires. That's not a thing that happens. But they can move into an ionic solution. An ionic solution like a dilution of citric acid. And that is our electrolyte. When zinc is exposed to the acid in the lemon juice, the acid oxidizes or removes electrons from the zinc. And the resulting positively charged zinc ions move into solution. The resulting electrons, they collect in the metal and then rush across the wire into the copper, which, if you remember, wants electrons more than zinc does. Those electrons now in the copper pull a couple of protons or hydrogen ions out of the acid and reduce them, adding electrons. The result is hydrogen gas, which if we were in there, we might be able to see as very, very tiny bubbles forming on the copper electrode. In summary, the electricity is coming not from the lemon, but from a chemical reaction resulting from the differences in electronegativities between zinc and copper. The electrons would rather be in the copper, and the lemon juice opens the door for them to get there. Want some proof? Well, oftentimes you'll see lemon battery experiments using multiple lemons connected in series to give you more power. But you don't actually need to do that. If I push in 3 nails and 3 copper wires in the same lemon, I get roughly 3 times as much electric current. As long as there's enough space in the lemon and enough lemon juice, the power is in the zinc, not in the lemon. Thank you for watching this SciShow Experiment.
So how does this relate to Anthem, you may be asking? So in the story, through his experiments, Equality is able to prove theories and learn things that are new to him. And one of these experiments that he does produces an electrical response using similar basic ideas. So one of the things I wanted you to look at for your classwork here is to look at the question that we're asking before you actually read this section. So for this, you are going to need to use 2 pieces of evidence. So we started with 3 at the beginning of this unit. We went back to 1. Now we're going to 2. We're changing it up so you don't always get comfortable with the same amount of things. So for this, you're going to need a topic sentence that restates the answer and answers your question, or a topic sentence that restates and then an answer. That's fine. You need 2 pieces of evidence, which means 2 quotes that answer the question. And for each of those quotes, you're going to need a piece of analysis. So 2 total, 1 for each piece of evidence, and then a closing statement that ties it all together. So our question down here is, in Chapter 3 and 4, Equality discovers 2 things. One is scientific, and one is emotional. These two things change his life forever and shape his actions for the rest of this story. What are these two things he discovers, and why are they so influential to him? All right, so just proving what these things are, that's going to be your pieces of evidence, but your analysis is really going to look at why are they so influential. All right, so if you tell me, and I'll give you a piece, that he discovers electricity, well, why is this so important to him? What does it do for him? How is it going to advance him or bring him further along in the story? And those are the things that you're going to want to explain when you're doing your analysis. So if you're looking at your assignment, we just covered the PowerPoint here. The Anthem Chapter 3 and 4, that's going to be your text for reading. That's the text we're going to use today when we read it. The evidence-based analysis is the sheet with the question that I just read you. I actually cut it right from the page to put it in your PowerPoint. And we're going to look at this race evidence sheet here. All right, so this graphic organizer looks very similar to the one that you used last time where you had one piece of information. All right, now you're going to have a second one. So you restate and you answer. Those can be in one sentence or in two, but as long as you actually answer that question of what are these two things that he discovers. You don't have to talk about the influential part because that will come later in the analysis. But definitely, what are these two things? Two things equality discovers are blank and blank. That's all you need to restate and answer your question. Then you have citation 1 and your first explanation. And then this should say 2, citation 2 and explanation 2, but this is your second one. So this is the first thing he discovers, which is scientific. This is the second thing he discovers, which is emotional. And remember, in the explanation section, you're putting how these things are so influential or why they are so influential to him. Why are they so important? And please don't forget to put a closing sentence on the end of this. So today, as always, we're going to be looking at our Anthem Chapter 3 and 4. We are going to, as usual, have your vocabulary words folded with their definitions and notes that we're going to be discussing on the other side, and then Chapter 4 will be later, farther on down in the document. We, equality, have discovered a new power of nature, and we have discovered it alone, and alone are to know it. It is said, now let us be lashed for it if we must. The Council of Scholars has said that we all know the things which exist, and therefore the things which are not known by all do not exist. But we think that the Council of Scholars is blind. The secrets of the earth are for all men to see, but only for those who will seek them. We know, for we have found a secret unknown to all of our brothers. We know not what this power is, nor whence it comes. But we know its nature. We have watched it and worked with it. We saw it first 2 years ago. One night we were cutting open the body of a dead frog when we saw its leg jerking. It was dead, yet it moved. Some power unknown to men was making it move. We could not understand it. Then, after many tests, we found the answer. The frog had been hanging on a wire of copper, and it had been the metal of the knife which had sent the strange power to the copper through the brine of the frog's body. We put a piece of copper and a piece of zinc into the jar of brine. We touched a wire to them, and there, under our fingers, was a miracle which had never occurred before, a new miracle and a new power. So in this case, the brine, which is an acidic, salty solution that the frog was in, maybe to preserve it, okay, because that acted like the lemon does. It had the same chemical reaction that we saw in the video with the copper and the nail and the lemon. So now he's using exactly the same types of things, and he's discovering electricity, and that electricity is making the frog's body jump. This discovery haunted us. We followed it in preference to all our studies. We worked with it. We tested it in more ways than we can describe, and each step was as another miracle unveiling before us. We came to know that we had found the greatest power on earth, for it defies all the laws known to men. It makes the needle move and turn on the compass which we stole from the home of the scholars. But we had been taught, when still a child, that the lodestone points to the north, and that this is a law which nothing can change. Yet our new power defies all laws. We found that it causes lightning, and never have men known what causes lightning. The thunderstorms were raised in thunderstorms we raised a tall rod of iron by the side of our hole, and we watched it from below. We have seen the lightning strike it again and again, and now we know that the metal draws the power of the sky, and that the metal can be made to give it forth. All right, so he's also learning about magnetism, how to change the compass. He's learning about the electricity from the lightning, which is attracted to metal and goes down into the earth. So he's learning all of these things that we've known for a very long time, for centuries, if not, longer. And he is just discovering them now for the first time because his society completely got rid of all of these scientific discoveries. So now he is the first one to really discover things, and probably at this point knows way more than the scholars do. So when you're answering your questions today, this is his first discovery, is electricity. All right? Why is this so important to him? Think about the things that he's been denied at this point, and why, for him to discover this, that makes him feel amazing. All right? Those are the things you should be talking about when you're writing your response today. We have built strange things with this discovery of ours. We used it for the copper wires, which we found here under the ground. We have walked the length of our tunnel with a candle lighting the way. We could go no further than half a mile, for earth and rock have fallen at both ends. But we gathered all the things we found, and we brought them to our workplace. We found strange boxes with bars of metal inside, with many cords and strands and coils of metal. We found wires that led to strange little globes of glass on the walls. They contained threads of metal thinner than a spider's web. So this is old systems for electricity and old light bulbs that he's finding right now. These things help us in our work. We do not understand them, but we think that the men of the unmentionable times had known our power of the sky. And these things had some relation to it. We do not know, but we shall learn. We cannot stop now, even though it frightens us that we are alone in our knowledge. No single one can possess greater wisdom than the many scholars who are elected by all men for their wisdom. Yet we can. We do. We have fought against saying it, but now it is said. We do not care. We will forget all men, all laws, and all things save our metals and our wires. So much is still to be learned. So long a road lies before us, and what care we if we must travel it alone? So when he says all these things, it makes you wonder, if these are not the smartest men, if these are not the men who actually want to advance society, why are they elected? Clearly they don't possess greater knowledge, nor do they seek it, so why are they considered great? Equality is greater than these men are in his discovery, in his want for discovery, in his need for experimentation. So what is it, do you think, about the society that makes people consider ignorance great? And that's something you really want to think about in the overall scope of this story. Chapter 4. Many days passed before we could speak to the Golden One again. But then came the day when the sky turned white, as if the sun had burst and spread its flame in the air, and the fields lay still without breath, and the dust of the road was white in the glow. So the women of the field were weary, and they tarried over their work, and they were far from the road when we came. But the Golden One stood alone at the hedge, waiting. We stopped, and we saw their eyes, so hard and scornful to the world, were looking at us as if they would obey any word we might speak. And we said, "We have given you a name in our thoughts, Liberty." "What is our name?" they asked. "The Golden One." "Nor do we call you Equality when we think of you." "What name have you given us?" They looked straight into our eyes, and they held their head high, and they answered, "The Unconquered." For a long time we could not speak. Then we said, "Such thoughts as these are forbidden, Golden One." "But you think such thoughts as these, and you wish us to think them. We looked into their eyes, and we could not lie. Yes, we whispered. And they smiled, and then we said, Our dearest one, do not obey us. They stepped back, and their eyes were wide and still. Speak those words again, they whispered. Which words? We asked, but they did not answer, and we knew it. Our dearest one, we whispered. Never have men said this to women. The head of the golden one bowed slowly, and they stood still before us, their arms at their sides, the palms of their hands turned to us, as if their body were delivered in submission to our eyes. And we could not speak. Then they raised their head, and they spoke, simply and gently, as if they wished us to forget some anxiety of their own. So before I move on, this idea that they don't have terms, what they call terms of endearment, meaning names of love. He calls her our dearest one and things like that. Because they usually don't love in this society. So the fact that they are acknowledging it and she is willing to acknowledge it, that's kind of a big step for both of them at this point. All right, so she gets ready to speak to him. The day is hot, they said, and you have worked for many hours and you must be weary. No, we answered. It is cooler in the fields, they said, and there is water to drink. Are you thirsty? Yes, we answered, but we cannot cross the hedge. We shall bring the water to you, they said. Then they knelt by the moat. They gathered water in their 2 hands, and they rose, and they held the water to our lips. We do not know if we drank that water. We only know suddenly that their hands were empty, but we were still holding our lips to their hands, and that they knew it, but did not move. We raised our head and stepped back, for we did not understand what had made us do this, and we were afraid to understand it. And the golden one stepped back and stood looking upon their hands in wonder. Then the golden one moved away, even though no others were coming. And they moved, stepping back, as if they could not turn from us, their arms bent before them, as if they could not lower their hands. So essentially, he's just kissed her hands. He put his lips to her hands so he could drink the water, but then he didn't remove his lips. So this for him was a natural reflex or natural response. This is something he's never done before. He doesn't know quite why he did it, but it felt normal. She didn't shy away from him either. She was completely awestruck by it because this is something that they don't have in their society. So here's that other thing, he's discovering love for the first time. He's discovering, these words of love, and he's kissing her hand, and, all of these things are happening as a natural reflex and a natural response. And keep in mind, they don't have affection in this society, so these are things that don't exist to them on a normal basis. So when you're looking at that, why is this so important? Well, these are things that, his body knows how to do, his brain knows how to do, even without being taught how to do them. All right? So this is the end of the lesson for today. So you have plenty of information to answer your questions and to get your writing done, and you have plenty of time to do that before the end of your class time today. So enjoy, and we will see you next time.